You know, no one tells you that when you start your self-love journey and you decide to self-heal and you decide to cut yourself off from toxic environments and toxic people, that you go through a season when you're quite lonely. You know, I talk about self-love and finding yourself and really hyper-focusing on yourself and cutting off those who are not good for you. But there's also another side that once you do all those things, you're making a really big sacrifice, because there's stages where you feel really lonely and you feel like you want to revert back to your old self, because it's like, if this is so good for me, then why do I feel like this? But it's a growing pain. There's growing pains in any season of your life, in any new thing. You're always going to go through stages where you feel as though, am I making the right decision? Should I have done this? Why am I so lonely if that person was meant to leave? You know, especially when you're cutting off people that aren't for you. There's a lonely stage after that, because you're so used to having them in your life that now that they're not in your life, you're thinking, what do I do now? And it's not talked about enough. When you start your self-love journey, there's people that you're going to have to let go of, because those people no longer contribute to the newer version of yourself. They were for the old you, but they don't fit into the new person you're about to be. Sometimes there's family members that you have to distance yourself from. Maybe they're toxic to your mental health. Sometimes there's certain things you used to do. Like for myself, I used to smoke. I stopped smoking and I stopped drinking. Smoking was something that gave me a lot of comfort. It was like my best friend. Like nobody, unless you smoked weed and you really depended on it, no one would understand the type of bond you could really have with weed. Like that was my best friend. That was something I had to let go of because it was no longer serving me. Sometimes you have to let go of old mindsets. Sometimes you have to let go of old habits. Sometimes you have to let go of that thing that you thought was your comfort, that you would run to straight away as soon as you felt any type of way. Sometimes you have to let go of that. Because when you're becoming a newer version of yourself, you're teaching yourself not to become codependent on anyone. Because codependency is not healthy. Of course, you can have people you can rely on, but when you become codependent, it's almost like you can't fully function in a certain situation without them. And I had that with a lot of things. I had that with weed. I had that with guys. I'd always have a guy for a different situation. If I felt like I needed to be distracted, I'd have a guy for that. If I felt like I was really lonely, I'd have a guy for that. If I was feeling a bit insecure, I'd have a guy that would feed my ego. And what I'm trying to tell you is sometimes you have to let go of the things that you're codependent on. And that can leave you in a awkward situation, because now you're going to find yourself in a situation where you have nothing to run to and you have to find a new safe haven. You have to rely on God. You have to trust that, okay, God, I ain't got him to run to anymore. I ain't got weed to run to. I can't just, hide from my problems at the end of a bottle. I've got to rely on you, God. I've got to actually find a solution. I've got to actually deal with how I feel. And sometimes it's a scary place, because sometimes you can't tell people what's going on because you have to learn how to deal with it yourself for a while. You know, sometimes that's letting go of toxic friends. Sometimes the friends that you had were not serving your mental health. They were not good for you. And that's not meaning they're a bad person, but that could mean that who they are doesn't fit who you are trying to become. Sometimes they were just for going out partying and drinking and smoking, or maybe they were just there to just have a good time. And if you're no longer into that, then they no longer serve you. And sometimes what we try and do, we try and hold on to those friends by trying to make them friends in different areas. Now, not all friends are all-rounders. Some friends are just for partying, socialization, drinking buddies or whatever. Some friends, you have an emotional bond and you can use them for a support system. Some friends are work friends. Some friends are just strictly church friends. And I'm looking at my cat. What we try and do is when we no longer have anything in common, say for example with our partying friends, we now try and make them our emotional support. And then when they let us down, we're like, oh my gosh, I thought you was my friend. No, babe, they were your friend for socialization, but they were never your emotional support. And so what you got to do is you got to have a clear distinction between your friends. What are they for? And if they were for that and I'm no longer into that, then what are they for now? And that's not meaning you have to cut off everyone, but that means everyone that's in your life should serve a purpose. And sometimes when that person no longer serves a purpose and you have to let them go, it's scary for a while, because okay, what do I do now? You know, and sometimes that can mean you're letting go of a guy that no longer serves you, because say for example, you're now embarking on a celibacy journey and you two were always intimate. Now you're no longer intimate and he's not on celibacy. Now you have to let go of that. And maybe you lot had a bond. Maybe you really liked each other. Maybe you was really close, but now you have to choose yourself. And sometimes that leaves you in a stage of loneliness, a stage of, I don't know what to do. And sometimes it makes you feel like you want to go back because that was almost your comfort. That was your person. But sometimes you know that person's not for you. And you know that in order to move on to the next version of your life, to really allow the newer version of yourself to come out, you have to let them go. And it's never easy. It is hard. And it's a sacrifice, because Becoming the best version of yourself requires a lot of sacrifice. It's not easy. You can't just get there by doing it half-heartedly. You have to be intentional about becoming the newest and bestest version of yourself. It's an intentional journey. And that intentional journey means that you have to intentionally let go of things that no longer serve you. But with that comes that season of being alone, finding who you are in this stage. Because there's a person we want to be, of course. But to get to that person means that we have to transform into different persons, and we have to go through different seasons of life. And sometimes we have to go through those seasons by ourselves because people just wouldn't understand, or there's no one around us to help, And one thing about me, when I started on my journey of developing myself and becoming really intentional about who I wanted to be, I was very lonely, okay? I only had God to rely on. And if you know anything about God, sometimes he doesn't always talk, or sometimes his silence is him talking, and sometimes you want a friend that talks back, okay? And I felt really lonely because I literally basically had no one, okay? I cut off all the guys I was seeing. I cut off I really only had like one or two friends that I had to cut off, and I had to distance myself from a lot of people. And with that came loneliness. I was left by myself. I was no longer smoking weed, so I had nothing to distract me from when I was feeling emotional. I didn't have a guy to go to when I felt lonely. I didn't have a friend to go out with when I felt like just going out and distracting myself. I was now left with myself and a sober mind. And when I say it was really difficult, because there came things that tested me. And what I learned was I only became this person because I learned how to deal with everything without trying to escape it. I learned how to embrace everything that came into my life without trying to avoid it or without having someone else to turn to. I didn't have anyone else to turn to at this point. I only had God, and it almost allowed me to transform a bit quicker. I refuse to go back to my old self. I refuse to go back to the people from my former life, because I'll tell you something. When you begin to transform, no matter how lonely you feel, even if you try to go back to your old life, you have grown so much that you don't even realize. Sometimes you don't realize how much you've grown until you try and go back, okay? Sometimes you try and go back to old friends. But when you're around those old friends that used to serve your old self, you feel uncomfortable. They begin to irritate you. It just doesn't feel the same. You begin to feel unfulfilled. It's like you're longing for something that you don't know you're longing for, and they don't give you that. And you're looking at them thinking, what has changed? Like, why am I suddenly physically here but not mentally here? Like, why do I feel so out of place? I feel like I don't fit in anymore. And they haven't changed. The only thing that's changed is you. You no longer fit into that environment. You no longer fit with those people. And that's because that environment is no longer for you. You've grown so big that you're too big for that environment, and you feel like you don't fit in because you don't fit in. Okay, it's almost like being around smokers and all these people, and you know you don't live that life anymore. It just doesn't feel like you anymore. You just don't feel fulfilled, and so you think, okay, if I don't fit in with them and I just don't feel comfortable now, like, where do I fit in? Let me tell you something. You are in an awkward season of your life, and you're gonna go through awkward seasons of your life where you feel like you don't know what you're doing. All you know is, I just have to keep moving forward. You're now a newer version of yourself, and you don't know how new you are until you're around older people who knew the old you. And when they're referring to you as the old you, and you're thinking, that's not even me anymore, you just feel uncomfortable and sometimes irritated because you don't know how much you've grown until you try and fit into old shoes, okay? And when it starts feeling all tight, you're trying to squeeze in and you're just uncomfortable, and it's rubbing on your big toe, your heels getting blisters. You're thinking, nah, this just doesn't fit. But those shoes bring you so much nostalgia. It fit, like, this was you, but it just doesn't fit. So if this doesn't fit, and who am I now then? And that's the stage where God can begin to make you. When you're in a stage of, I don't even know where I am. Okay, that's fine. Now God can begin to lead you, because you're no longer trusting on your own understanding. You're no longer trusting in those friends to give you an identity. You're no longer trusting that guy to give you security. You're no longer trusting in weed to allow you to feel numb when you don't want to feel the pain. But now you're left to yourself and God, and you can really allow him to pour into you and lead you into who you're meant to be. When I went through my lonely season, I was asking God, bring me friends. Give me friends after your own heart. I need friends, God. I have no one. And in that season, I learned how to love being by myself, whereas I no longer depend on friends. I have friends that sometimes we don't talk for like 2 weeks, okay? But that doesn't diminish how close we are. It just means that we're busy and we don't feel as though we have to rely on each other, or we don't feel like, do they care about me? No, we care about each other, but we are adults. We have our own lives. I don't have time to talk every day, okay? One thing about me, I can't talk every day. I don't have the time. I've adjusted to being by myself and loving my own company and not feeling the need to get validation from other people. And so God began to bring me friends one by one. And what I realized was, even though he was bringing me friends, they wasn't all my friends for the same purpose. Some people that he brought to me, I could go out with them and have fun with them and it wouldn't be a problem. Some of them, we have an emotional bond. We have a connection. We built a connection. And that's what I want to let you know is God will bring new people into your life that serve the new you. Okay, because sometimes the older people that was in your life don't serve the new you and you can't keep them. Doesn't matter if you've known them from childhood. Sometimes you have to let them go. Sometimes they don't serve you, and sometimes you're not getting to the newer version of yourself because you're still trying to hold on to the old version of you. How can God take you higher when you're still trying to drag the past with you? You've got to let go of some of your past in order for God to bring you into the future that he has planned for you. You know, I know that sometimes what was holding me back was I was trying to hold on to the people in my past. I was trying to hold on to guys that I didn't want to let go of, not because they were still serving me, but because I just didn't want to detach. I didn't want to let go of that old version of myself. I got to a stage where I didn't even know who I was, and I was so frustrated because it's like, God, I let go of who I used to be because that's not who I want to be, but it's like I'm still not who I want to be, and it's because you're in that season of transition and it's scary. But if you decide to give up and just revert back to your old ways, then you're never going to get to fully materialize the person that you're meant to be. You have to go through that uncomfortable stage. You have to go through that lonely stage. Because if you don't learn to be alone, then you're never truly going to be satisfied. Okay, you have to learn to be by yourself. You have to learn to be by yourself without feeling so lonely. You have to learn to be by yourself and feeling content. And the way I done that was I filled my time. I filled my time with church. I filled my time with spending time with God. I began to focus on YouTube. I began to plan what I'm going to start. I began to plan my future more. And by doing that, I began to educate myself on what I need to be educated on in order to become the newer version of myself. I began to do a lot of self-work, okay? And that involves knowing where I'm going to distribute myself, okay? And I realized that I can't be in old environments because, let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you a story about myself. And I'll tell you this story because I know that a lot of women can learn from this story or even feel encouraged. With me, the type of person I used to be, I always used to be around the hood guys. The road guys, the hood guys, you know, dashboard baby. They used to come pick me up and we just drive around and I just run errands with them. Like, I just be in there, I just be around them. Like, I had this one friend. He was a hood guy. Like, when I say hood to the gods, like, imagine the biggest hood guy you could think of. That was him. And I used to just always be around him. I used to just be basically just in his life. And I used to be around all of his friends, and I used to just be around his lifestyle. And I cut him off when I decided to embark on a journey of self-love, of self-healing, and becoming a new version of myself. Because that lakeishaa, I didn't want to be that lakeishaa that was smoking and drinking and being around all of that. I didn't want to be that version of me. So I decided to cut that off. Even though we was close, I decided that I can't be around you because the only thing we have in common is that hood life, okay? And I'm done with that. This year, he recently got in contact with me and he said, let me come pick you up. And I knew I shouldn't have gone, but I went. And he came to pick me up and was riding around. And in that situation, I was just thinking, I don't fit in here anymore. I was thinking, why do I feel so irritated? And I realized I feel irritated because I don't fit in here. He hasn't changed, but I have. Okay, he's in the car smoking weed, blowing it all around the car. And I'm just thinking, bro, can you just not smoke? And then he was onto like his third blunt and I realized, oh my gosh, is this what I used to look like when I used to smoke weed? Every minute I have to smoke. Now I know that, yeah, this looks wild because I'm not about this anymore. Like, I don't want to be around this. And then we was just driving around and he was around all these friends and I was just thinking, oh my gosh, this is ghetto. Like, oh my gosh, this is ghetto. Like, the ghetto. And I was just thinking, nah, mate, this ain't for me anymore. We didn't have much in common. Like, the way he's talking, all this swearing and shouting and hood language. And I was just like, bro, I don't know what you're saying. I didn't realize how much I'd changed until I was in his car. And I realized, lakeishaa, you've changed, boy. These shoes don't fit anymore. I thought that if people that know the new lakeishaa saw me in this environment, how would I feel? And I realized that I wouldn't feel proud. I'd feel embarrassed that the lakeishaa that is out here preaching, become the best version of yourself, is sitting in the hood guy's car, around all the hood guys, and acting like I'm one of them. When in my head, I'm thinking, I don't belong here. But I just wanted to see something. And I realized that I don't belong here. Even though I missed him as a friend, there was no longer a friendship there. Okay, and that's because I was the new version of myself, and our friendship was, when I used to feel lonely, he'd come pick me up and I'd just be distracted by him. But I realized I couldn't do that anymore. The new Lakeisha can't be seen with that. No matter how much I want to be there, how much I just want to be distracted, I can't, because I am my own brand. When people look at me, they have a certain stigma attached to my name now. I'm now self-development Lakeisha. I'm now self-improvement. I'm now self-healing. I'm not Lakeisha that's always around the hood, guys. I'm no longer that Lakeisha. So no matter how much I'd want to revert back to my old self, I am my own brand. When you see me, you see my brand. So I've got to remember that when people look at you, they look at your brand. Who are you? What do you stand for? When people look at you, what are they going to think? When people see you in your environment, what are they going to think? Do you know what I mean? When people look at what you wear, what are they going to think? And so you may feel lonely for a season. Yeah, you may feel like you're by yourself, isolated, and maybe you don't have anyone, and sometimes you want to go back, but those old shoes don't fit. Embrace the loneliness. Embrace being by yourself. And you embrace it by filling your time. Find things to do. Whether you spend more time with family, get more involved in church, or trying to find things that you like doing by yourself, start planning your future, start planning get into hobbies, reading, I don't know. You need to envision, what does the future you do? What does she do to fill her time? What kind of people does she associate with? What kind of language does she use? What is she doing? And you begin to do things that contribute towards your future person, because becoming your future woman is intentional. You're not going to get there by accident. Just because you're accomplished physically doesn't mean you're accomplished emotionally, spiritually, mentally, okay? You got to do the work, sis. Just because you look the part don't mean you are the part. So stop trying to focus so much on looking the part and become the part, okay? Because you don't want someone to look at you and think, oh yeah, she's the part, but I can see that she's insecure. I can see that she's not sure of herself, or she doesn't know who she is, okay? Stop looking for someone to agree with your opinions. Become who you want to become. Yeah, sometimes you got to walk alone. This journey, sometimes you got to walk by yourself, especially journeys with God. Walking with God, you got to be by yourself for a season. Okay, I've been by myself for a while, and it's only recently that God's bringing me people, because I now become content with being by myself. So I thank you for watching my L Talk, the real talk, my version of a TED Talk. If you like this video, please like, comment down below, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you think this video can bless someone, then please share. But I will see you in my next video.